Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to you.
Yes, welcome back. We're on session number 70.
Yes. 70. Wow, 70.
Yeah. We were discussing a letter where KH was answering some queries, 7 queries that Sinnett had made. And most of them had to do with Davidson. He was planning to write an article for the Theosophist, and so he asked yet some more questions. And KH very patiently is answering them. At one point he said, I must have not been very clear in my previous explanations, and that is my fault. So this is my penance, is having to explain it once again. He is very patient, but it does have a limit. Mm-hmm. One thing we mentioned was the lack, and this was 2 sessions ago, the lack of material for the various branches.
Yeah.
You had asked about that. What were they supposed to do?
Study material or even procedural, what takes place in the meetings.
Right. And one of the things you asked about was meditation. Why wouldn't they discuss meditation? And part of the answer is that Raja Yoga was almost completely unknown in the Western world. They might have known the name, some people, but very few people knew that it was all about meditation, and they certainly didn't know how to go about meditation.
Is interesting. I think this is worth fleshing out a little bit. Back in this era, the concept of meditating wasn't really a well-known thing. It wasn't done very frequently by many people.
No. In fact, in one of the very first letters that was addressed to Hume in December of 1880, KH was talking about the lack of activity and misconceptions. He was talking about the British Theosophical Society and lamenting the fact that they practiced brotherhood in name only. They didn't really believe in it because they believed in the superiority of the white race. So, no, they didn't really believe in brotherhood. So he also mentioned that at best, they practice a form of quietism that paralyzes the soul. He didn't use the word paralyze, but something similar to that. And what he meant by that is quietism was a practice that came about in the Catholic Church, but not from the hierarchy, from the lay people who wanted something that they could do on their own without having to appeal to the priest all the time. Well, the church doesn't want that. They want that dependence on an intermediary. So their idea was basically just sitting in silence and trying to contact your spiritual self or whatever. It wasn't even very clear. This started in the 1700s, and the church put a stop to it pretty quickly. But as KH said, all it did was stifle any possible communication because there was nothing active about it. Also, the mediums at the time practiced something called sitting for development. If a spiritualist wanted to become a medium or enhance their mediumistic abilities, they would sit in silence and just practice being open to whatever astral influences around them.
Both of these techniques, though, might have been influenced by some kind of meditation teacher somehow, maybe?
Not necessarily.
They're both like knocking at the door of meditation.
Yes, but without the real knowledge behind it.
But the idea to do that, I mean, they're aiming in the right direction. I wonder how the Catholics, for example, I mean, that is the beginning of it. Get quiet, try to connect with your soul. I mean, that is
Right.
a technique.
But the problem is if you don't understand what the higher self is,
Of course.
then what is more likely to happen is that astral entities
Right.
will say, ooh, look at this person just waiting for someone to influence them.
Right.
And that's how spiritualism got its reputation for contacting astral entities, and they thought they were the spirits of dead people.
One of the main teachings that KH has been imploring upon these guys is come out of your world and into ours. To me, I mean, that would be mainly meditation. Of course, physically they can remove themselves from parties and eating meat and drinking alcohol and things. That's an active coming out of your world. But the idea of getting the mind quiet and calm. So is it safe to assume that KH and Moria didn't really give any meditation instruction?
Not until later. Only in the later years before HPB died did she begin talking more about Raja Yoga and about character development. Mm-hmm. As we know, Raja Yoga has much to do with purifying your vehicles. That had no concept for the spiritualists or the Catholics.
That concept is being taught, though. It's just, I guess, in their own way. You know, it's not directly saying, get pure, but that is being, I mean, he is suggesting.
They're basically focused on being receptive. Mm-hmm. The active part would have to come from somewhere else. They weren't being proactive themselves. And that's what Raja Yoga is, having a purpose and making it happen, not just sitting there and say, okay, I'm open to inspiration for whoever is willing to inspire me. So HPB did give a lot of instruction to her esoteric group at the last part of her life for about 1.5 years before she died.
It is curious. Sinnett and Hume don't have a lot of clairvoyant abilities, but becoming sensitive could be developed through practicing quieting the mind, through meditating regularly. Mm-hmm. And it hasn't been emphasized, hasn't been taught really.
No, and as we pointed out in our last session, Theosophy covers absolutely everything in the world. So since they don't have a system like a university does, where, okay, you start with this basic course, and then you build from there, they work with, at the time, with individual pupils. And they changed the way of teaching based on each individual. So it was a mentor and a student.
The guru-disciple relationship has been effective forever.
Right. But in our sessions recently, remember, KH said we're not going to work with individual Europeans anymore. We're going to work with groups. And that's exactly what they did with HPB and her esoteric group.
Okay.
So I think that is probably still the process today, is that in small groups of pupils that work together and who meet regularly and discuss things, they can be open to inspiration from the Mahatmas.
Do you know about what year she started the first esoteric group, or her esoteric
I
group?
think it was 1889, I believe.
So it was after this period. We're not
Oh,
quite there
yes,
yet.
we're not there yet. She wrote The Secret Doctrine and The Voice of the Silence, I believe, before that group started.
That's so interesting that the instruction on personal practice, call it yoga, call it meditation, call it Raja Yoga, the actual instruction on the practices didn't come into the group setting yet. It was individuals only. The Theosophy as a whole didn't have that information.
Right. And they were struggling to come up with a system. They knew what worked for Asian chelas because they're imbued with a lot of the information that Europeans were completely oblivious to. So they had a real uphill battle trying to convey so much information to them and getting rebuffed on every side and people getting angry because it didn't fit their expectations. It didn't enhance their egos, and they didn't like that. All right, let's delve back into this series of queries. We finished query number 5, which again was about Kama Loka, and now it's going to change a little bit in tone. So this letter, just to recap, is letter number 104, received in Allahabad on February 2nd, 1883.
Query 6. Your deductions as to the indefinite prolongation in Devachan of some particular moment of earthly bliss having been unwarranted, your question in the last paragraph of this interrogatory need not be considered.
Yeah, your question is out of bounds, so we're not going to talk about it.
The stay in Devachan is proportioned to the unfinished psychic impulses originating in earth life. Those persons whose attractions were preponderantly material will be drawn back into rebirth sooner by the force of tanha. Ooh, that's a different word. I haven't heard that before.
Yeah, well, we have, but it's the desire, it's the will to live again in a physical body.
Okay. As our London opponent correctly remarks, these metaphysical subjects are only to be understood in part.
And I think that's C.C. Massey.
A higher faculty belonging to the higher life must see, and it is truly impossible to force it upon one's understanding in mere words. One must see with his spiritual eye, hear with his spiritual ear, feel with the sensation of his spiritual eye.
Capital I.
Ashta Vijnana or Vijnana before he can comprehend this doctrine fully. Otherwise, it may simply increase one's discomfort and add very little to his knowledge. Wow.
Yeah. So, as we've mentioned before, you have to have developed a degree of intuition before you can really understand that. Otherwise, it's going to make you uncomfortable, mainly because it doesn't really make sense to the concrete mind, to the lower mind, and so people get frustrated.
We've mentioned before quite a few times that the higher mind or the higher mental vehicle is the part of us where the soul exists. Approximately, it's not very specific, but the soul exists there, and that's the part of us that thinks in more abstract terms. And this term Vijnana or Vijnana, that relates to the Vijnana Maya Kosha, which is that exact same level of our being, the layer of us that is the higher mind, the abstract vehicle. I don't know what is referred to by Ashta.
Oh, I'm not sure about that either. I forgot to look it up.
That could, in our language, your soul, our higher self, our higher mind. We can
Right.
just call it that. That makes sense. So he wraps it up there. I'm surprised he didn't go on for a couple pages about that. But
No, I think he's getting kind of tired of all of this.
Now we're on to query 7. The reward provided by nature for men who are benevolent in a large systematic way and who have not focused their affections upon an individual or specialty is that, if pure, they pass quicker through the kama and rupa lokas into the higher sphere because of that, since it is one where the formulation of abstract ideas and the consideration of general principles fill the thought of its occupants.
Yes, and we've mentioned that before, especially Kama Loka, which is about the emotions, discharging the emotional energy left over at the end of a person's life. But the Rupa Loka is part of Devachan. It's the lower part of Devachan. Arupa Loka, without form, is the higher part. So the lower part also can be gone through much more quickly by a developed person, someone who has been working on this for quite a while.
personality is the synonym for limitation. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow. That's kind of a
it is a
profound
limitation.
statement. And the more restricted the person's ideas, the closer he will cling to the lower spheres of being, because that's where the personality exists.
Yes.
And the longer he loiters on the plane of selfish social intercourse. Social intercourse, that's funny.
Yeah.
The social status of a being is, of course, a result of karma, the law being that like attracts like. The being preparing for rebirth is drawn into the gestative current with which the preponderant attractions coming over from the last birth make him assimilate. Okay. And those preponderant attractions, we've referred to those as skandhas. It's the things that we are attracted to, our tendency in this life. They do carry over depending upon their strength in the next life and thereafter. Thus, one who died a peasant may be reborn a king because he wouldn't be attached to his peasantry. Well, some people would be. Some people, I'm a peasant and that's all there is to it. But usually they're not.
No, there is truth to that.
Yeah. Thus, one who died a peasant may be reborn a king, and the dead sovereign may next see light in a laborer's tent.
Ah, really? Yeah, so some of these people who think they're high and mighty because they have so much power and they misuse it to harm other people might just need a little dose of what it's like to be one of those people who live under people like that.
And hence the reason for the multitudinous number of lives that we live, hundreds of them, thousands of them sometimes.
So if you have control over a number of people, whether it's 2 people or 20 million people, be very careful because you might just be one of the repressed people in your next life.
Don't abuse your power. Be a steward. This law of attraction asserts itself in 1,000 accidents of birth, a flagrant misnomer.
Yeah, there are almost no accidents of birth. Most people think that, well, some people are just born with all of these talents and abilities and wealth, or in a very developed country as opposed to a developing country. Just pure chance. Nonsense. It's not.
When you realize that the skandhas are the elements of limited existence, then you will have realized also one of the conditions of Devachan which has now such a profoundly unsatisfactory outlook for you. Your speculation that the well-being and enjoyment of the upper classes are due to a better karma are also incorrect in their general application. This is good. I'm glad we're talking about this. This seems practical.
Yes, and both of them, Hume and Sinnett, even at this point, are still convinced that they are in the vastly superior race on Earth.
They have an altruistic ring about them which is hardly reconcilable with karmic law, since well-being and enjoyment are more often the causes of new and overloaded karma than the effects of the latter. Right. If we strive for just comfort and lavish lifestyles, we're adding karma to ourselves, to our soul, really.
Not only by lording it over other people, but just the fact that they live lavishly. They eat very poorly from our point of view, but for them, they think they eat very richly and live very richly. None of those things induce spiritual development, self-transformation, not one iota. The person who drinks every single night to the point that they can't think clearly, how do they meditate at 3 o'clock the next morning?
Even as a broad rule, poverty and humble condition in life are less a cause of sorrow than wealth and high birth.
Yeah, I used to think that people were really lucky to be born wealthy and have all of the opportunities. I thought they must just really be able to enjoy life. But I've had opportunities to see how some of those people live, including ones who had private jets and beautiful multi-million dollar vacation homes. They're not happier. In fact, most of them are very unhappy, but they're very driven. As I heard one economist describe wealthy people, and this economist had been at one time a drug addict, addicted to heroin. He said, for these people, wealth is the drug. They cannot get enough of it. No matter how much they get, they want more, more, more. And it becomes obsessive to them.
Humble condition in life, yeah, less a cause of sorrow than wealth and high birth, but more on that later on. Ooh, I want to hear more. My answers are once more assuming the shape of a volume rather than the look of a decent letter. This answer is a page and a half more, so that is long.
Well, now he's finished with the queries, so the rest is about other things.
Oh, so that is the last answer. Okay.
Yes.
So he continues.
So now he's quoting Sinnett.
Writing a new book or something for the Theosophist? Well, since your desire is to reach the most receptive minds, not just the greatest number, don't you think you'd better write a book as well as for the journal?
So both. Do both.
You might put into esoteric Buddhism an excellent title, by the way. That's his proposed title for
The book.
Nice. An excellent title, by the way. Such matter as would be an amplification of what has appeared in the Theosophist, a systematic, thoughtful exposition of what was and will be given in the magazine in sporadic segments of fragments.
Fragments on Occult Truth, which was the ongoing periodic articles that Hume started to write, and then when he got bored, Sinnett took over.
I'm glad KH thinks the title Esoteric Buddhism is so appropriate.
And pay attention to that, because later HPB, channeling the masters or speaking on their behalf, said it wasn't a great title. So just remember that.
I am especially anxious on M's account, that's Moria, that the journal should be a success.
Yeah, so Moria, even though he isn't participating actively in the correspondence right now, is aware of everything, and he has his opinions on it.
It should be circulated in England more than it is now.
And the British Theosophists were terrible. They were not supporting the Theosophical Society in general. They believed that their society was sole and separate from the worldwide TS. And
Silly.
even today, there's a strong feeling of that in England. They don't seem to be doing too much. They had a beautiful building that they owned there until about a year ago. It got sold, and no one seems to know where the money went. So I don't know where the remaining members are living now, but they don't have a building that they own in London
It's
anymore.
rare that any of the TSs sell their properties.
Yeah, and the address was 50 Gloucester Place, very nice area of London. So the building was worth a few $1 million.
It should be circulated in England more than it is now. Your new book, drawing the attention of the most educated, thoughtful portion of the Western public, would thus do it a world of good, and both would be helpful. Do not lose sight of Lilly's Buddha and Early Buddhism when you write it. Oh, he's giving him some
Yeah, that was
some
one of the
advice.
few books written by Europeans on Buddhism
And do we know who this Lilly is?
that they approved of.
Okay. Have we heard of the name Lilly before? Is
No, and I don't know much about it. It doesn't seem to be very popular today, but at the time there was very little to choose from.
Right. With its host of fallacies, unwarranted assumptions, and distortion of facts, this snobbish volume nevertheless had the greatest success with spiritualists and even mystically inclined Christians. Wow, so he's saying it's far from perfect, but
But it has some value, and we have to go with that.
wow. I will have it reviewed briefly by Subba Rao or HPB, furnishing them with notes myself, but more on this in some future letter. You have ample material to work on from my notes and papers. You have given only a few of the many points touched by me and amplified and re-amplified in heaps of letters as I do now. That's funny. I've repeated and repeated because you keep asking.
Yeah, exactly.
You could work out of them any number of new articles for the magazine and have enough left over for the book. And these, in their turn, may be followed up in a third volume later on. It may be well to always keep this plan in mind. So he 100% is saying very clearly here that I'm giving you so much. You disseminate it. I'm working with you, and you take it and go get it out there.
Right. And as we mentioned before, Sinnett was so busy with his job as editor of the newspaper and having a family to take care of that trying to learn all of this was quite a project. And he had only done marginally well up to this point. So KH is hopeful that now that he has more time, that he will be able to spend that studying the material that he's got. We'll see whether he does or not.
Good. Your wild scheme with Darjeeling, good friend, is not wild, but simply impractical.
Now, we don't know the details, but I'm assuming that he was referring to the fact that HPB had gone to Darjeeling to meet the masters personally because they were going to do some work on her health. Sinnett, I think, must have said, "What if I go to Darjeeling? Would you be willing to meet with me?"
The time has not yet come. Oh yeah, that makes sense, what you inferred there. However, the drift of your energies is carrying you slowly but steadily in the direction of personal communications. Oh, so he's doing better.
Yeah. KH is very optimistic.
So at this point, Sinnett has turned a corner because he was kind of going off.
Right. And he is focusing more, especially since Hume has pulled out and has become an active enemy.
Yeah.
That has energized him to try harder.
I see. Wow, okay. I will not say that I desire it as much as you do. He's just being honest, huh?
Yeah.
For seeing you nearly every day of my life, I care very little for objective interaction, but for your sake, I would, if I could, hasten that day.
Yeah.
Wow, he's being very honest. He sees him every day. Geez.
Well, because he checks on him every day to see what he's up to, what he's been doing. Yeah. It's Sinnett who is unable to communicate psychically with him.
Yeah. Wow. I wonder how many people they check up on.
Oh, quite a few, I'm sure.
To this day, you think?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
As we've said, they look out on the world and they see every single individual that shows any degree of promise.
That's probably in a general sense, though, probably.
And I'm sure each one of them
zoom in.
has dozens of people that they check on daily or weekly or monthly.
Even if they've never had any type of interaction or any type
Right, exactly.
They're kind of
Because
monitoring.
a lot of these people are making progress on their own because they're meditating and they are studying the material that's available. It's not in the large organizational groups that this is happening.
Right.
It's in individuals and small groups of people that are operating perhaps on the fringes of those organizations.
Most of the large organizational groups, there isn't a ton of real work being done. It's more sensational. It's more exciting.
If you look at the courses that are offered by the TSA, the Theosophical Society in America, I shake my head sometimes. How to look up past lifetimes, how to awaken your clairvoyant abilities, and just things like that. And I'm dismayed sometimes at the lack of focus and insight that they have.
That's why it's usually done in more focused, more esoteric groups where it's not as exciting for most people.
And the other thing is, those organizations are open to any individual who agrees to their terms. So they collect quite a gaggle of
A gaggle.
different people, some of them more than a little bit off. But when you have a select group, then you choose who is part of that. And look at how the Mahatmas operate. They don't say, we're going to train anybody that presents themselves. They say, present yourself, we will test you. We'll see how good you are, what your resolve is, how far you can go. But they're not going to waste time on somebody that doesn't show really good promise.
Right. They wouldn't waste their precious energy or time. Meanwhile, be happy in knowing that you have done more real good to your fellow men in the past 2 years than in many previous years, and to yourself also.
Yeah.
He's being kind.
Yeah,
That's good.
because when you teach other people, you're the one who benefits the most.
I am quite sure that you do not sympathize with the selfish feeling that prompts the London branch to withhold even their small proportion of pecuniary support, amounting to a few guineas a year from the parent society.
So the British TS isn't even turning over their dues to the Theosophical Society. They just keep them. And a few guineas would be a few $100s. So that's how selfish they are. They really think that they're completely separate from the TS. They're above them, in a sense. And they really don't like Alcott. They think he's a bumbling idiot.
Jeez. What members would ever think of refusing payment of fees to any other society, club, or association they may happen to belong to? It is this indifference and selfishness that have permitted them to stand by idly and calmly from the beginning and see the two in India giving their last rupee and Upasika actually selling her jewelry for the honor of the society, though many of the British members are far better able to afford the necessary sacrifices than they are. Mr. Alcott's sister is actually starving in America, and the poor man, loving her dearly as he does, nevertheless wouldn't spare 100 rupees from the Theosophist Fund to help her with 6 small children if HPB hadn't insisted on it and Moria hadn't given a small sum for it. Jeez.
Yeah, they are struggling desperately to come up with the money that they need to operate the TS. And the British TS is like, yeah, go fish.
But Alcott is generous. Why wouldn't he spare?
Because he wasn't going to take it away from the Theosophical Society. And HPB said, do it. And Moria also donated some money to help her.
However, I have told Mr. Alcott to send you the necessary official authority to compound the fees or make any other business agreement at London that you may think best. But remember, my very valued brother, that if poor Hindu clerks on 20 or 30 rupee salaries are expected to help pay the society's expenses with that fee, it is sheer injustice to totally exempt the far richer London members.
Yeah, exactly. That's their attitude.
Wow. Do justice though the heavens fall. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's a quote from the Bible.
Wow.
Do justice though the heavens fall. It's a great quote.
Huh.
KH really knows the Bible way better than almost any of the Christians in England.
By all means, put the money relations on a better footing than at present. I have faith in your wisdom, my friend, though you would have a right to be fast losing your faith in mine, considering how difficult the negotiations for the Phoenix capital are proving. What's the Phoenix capital?
That's the money to get his newspaper going.
Oh, right, the
He's
Phoenix,
looking
yes.
for investors.
You must understand that I am still under last year's restrictions, notwithstanding the Chauhan's approval of my lay chela, and cannot bring to bear on the parties concerned all the psychic powers that I otherwise could.
Yeah, so because of Hume and all of the trouble he was causing, they had been restricted by the Chauhan on the amount of energy they could waste on these two individuals. So
Waste.
he's still restricted in what he can do.
Besides, our laws and restrictions with regard to money or any financial operations, whether within or outside our association, are extremely severe, inflexible even on some points.
Basically, any money that they have control of, they don't consider belongs to them, no matter what the source was. They consider that that belongs to the Brotherhood. And so they are very careful about how they use that money. They do have money, as we pointed out, but it's not unlimited. They don't have the hundreds of billions of dollars that some churches do.
We have to proceed very cautiously, hence the delay. But I do hope that you think that something has already been done in that direction. Yes, KH did mean that the review of Mr. Isaacs should appear in the Theosophist, and by the author of The Occult World. So do send it before you go.
Yeah, Sennett was the author of The Occult World.
And for the sake of old Sam Ward, I would like to see it mentioned in the Pioneer, but that doesn't matter much now that you are leaving it.
Yeah, Sam Ward, remember, was the member of the Theosophical Society, and it was his nephew that wrote that book, Mr. Isaacs.
On that note, salam and best wishes. I am extremely busy with preparations of initiation. Whoa. Several of my chelas, Jwal Kul among others, are striving to reach the other shore. Wow, that's cool that he's sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, DK. And so initiation, I wonder if that's where he becomes an actual Mahatma, almost.
Well, the phrase he used, to reach the other shore, is specifically used in the voice of the silence to mean achieving arhat level.
And that's what KH is.
Yeah. And DK and others are striving to become Mahatmas. And it appears that DK did reach that level a few years later. Not quite yet, but in just a very few years, he did become a Mahatma. And
Wow.
I need to point out, too, that a lot of Theosophists claim that DK wasn't that advanced because KH at one point said he was a first-degree initiate. Notice that we've never talked about different degrees. HPB never talked about it. The Mahatmas didn't say first degree, second degree, fourth degree, or whatever.
Yeah, when did that language start being used?
Not until after HPB died. And then it became this whole contest. Oh, I'm a first-degree initiate. I'm a fourth-degree initiate.
He says extremely busy with preparations of initiation.
Right. And so in another place where HPB mentioned that there was a monastery where all of the chelas were first-degree chelas, she's talking about someone who is very advanced. A first degree in their parlance is someone who is on
Is
the
a
verge
master.
of becoming a Mahatma. So when they poo-poo that and say, oh, he was only a first-degree initiate, they're wrong.
So HPB did use the word first degree, but she was referring to becoming a, wow.
Yeah. So they don't necessarily use the same terminology that the second generation of Theosophical leadership did. We'll talk about that, but it became quite a messy situation in the 1920s especially. We'll cover that.
Yours faithfully, KH.
Yeah.
Okay.
So again, really good information here. Now, we're moving along because we're at the end of February now, and Sinnott is making arrangements to go to London. For how long, he's not sure, maybe 6 months. And he's trying to figure out the date for his departure. So he's going to be talking about that in the next couple of letters.
So now we're moving on to the next letter, and this is 105, February 1883.
And this was received at Allahabad still, so he hasn't closed out his house, but he is going to.
Since Moria Jr.'s impression... What's Moria Jr.?
That's Alcott.
Oh, okay. That's funny. Since Moria Jr.'s impression magnifying lens hasn't yet been perfectly ground... he puts the matter in a somewhat distorted shape.
Moria Jr. is a name that Alcott took upon himself. He considered himself Moria's son. And Moria was quite amused and approved of it, apparently. He thought that was funny.
That's funny.
But KH is saying that his impressions aren't exactly spot on just yet, so he does get things muddled sometimes.
Have we talked about Alcott's level of ability to perceive clairvoyantly?
Yeah, we did.
Does-
He, as I pointed out once before, it tends to be like early in the morning when you're just waking up and you're more receptive to things. He would sometimes get impressions then, but it was normally only if HPB conveyed the information or if the Mahatmas conveyed it in some other manner to Alcott that it was correct.
One last quick question, just for context. I don't know that we've also discussed many interactions between Alcott and Sinnott. Were they friends? Were they close?
Not close.
They never really lived in the same... Did they ever live close
No.
by? They didn't really.
No.
Okay.
And unlike HPB, who had spent weeks at times with the Senate, Alcott, I think, visited them maybe for a few days, and I don't know if he stayed with them or if he stayed nearby.
Okay.
But he doesn't have nearly as much interaction, and partly because Alcott is traveling all the time on behalf of the TS.
Okay. Moria did not want him to say there was anything like a possible failure,
That's regarding the newspaper.
but simply that there is the usual possibility of delay in any business transaction left to our countrymen alone.
Yeah, he's getting a little bit unhappy with his fellow Indians.
Along with the malevolent meddling of the Rothney Castle Swedenborg and other creators of calamity. Creators of calamity, that's fun.
Yeah. The
Rothney
Rothney Castle Swedenborg is Hume, of course. And he considers himself a yogi, a great advanced spiritual being like Swedenborg did.
From all I know of the situation, and I watch it as closely as I am permitted to, the chances are that the money will be raised by the end of March, but chance being unpredictable, the time of collection is not yet written in the book of fate.
So he's talking about a month away.
Now, this is which newspaper again?
The Phoenix. The Phoenix is his proposed newspaper name.
Much depends on contingencies, but still more on the Shimla yogi leaving us alone for a while.
Yeah, exactly. He's, as we've said, he's trying to destroy the Mahatmas and Theosophy.
But he's being facetious. He's being sarcastic, calling him a yogi.
Right,
Though.
of course,
Yeah.
because Hume
any-
thinks he's an advanced yogi because he developed some kind of clairvoyance to some degree, untrained.
Or trained by the Dugpa.
Well, he was given instructions on how to perform a certain type of pranayama, which did open up some degree of awareness on the astral plane. But as we know, the astral plane isn't where you see clearly.
3 lakhs of rupees have been as good as lost, owing to a letter written by him to an editor at Calcutta with a delineation of our true character, Jesuits, sorcerers, deceitful, selfish, etc. That editor showed it to a Raja who was hitherto well disposed and ready to do the bidding of the Mahatma brothers.
So that's what Hume is doing. He's saying, okay, these guys want to raise money for a newspaper. I'm going to do everything I can to prevent that from happening. So he's writing letters to editors, to influential people in India, and saying, yeah, these people who are looking for money, they're Jesuits, sorcerers, deceitful, selfish Asiatics. They're just in it for themselves.
I wonder if the Raja listened to Hume and withdrew his contribution.
Yeah, and 3 lakhs. Remember, the total they were trying to raise was 5 lakhs.
Wow.
5 lakhs was a little over $7 million in today's money. 60% of that, this one Raja was willing to invest, and now he withdrew that.
Jeez. Wow. There will be very little, if any, patriotism in this transaction. In a day or two, I will send you facts which will show you some persons in their true light. Ooh. Meanwhile, if I advise acting entirely upon your own judgment as to your departure date, it is because of the false light in which nearly all our actions are viewed by the Europeans who are, however indirectly, concerned with us. Jeez, this is terrible. I do not want to be misjudged by you even for one moment, but strange and crooked as our ways may appear at first sight, I hope you will never allow your European mind to be influenced by your Shimla friend. Well, more soon. Yours ever faithfully, K.H. This is terrible. Jeez.
Mm-hmm.
The dark forces try so hard to mute out the light.
Yes, they do. And dark is exactly right. They don't like the light. They don't like truth. So they try to cover it up. They try to make it appear other than it is. They tell lies. They have no problem telling lies about people who are telling the truth.
Right.
Yeah, look at some of the political systems in the world and see how certain parties operate, telling lie after lie after lie, and just repeating it ad infinitum.
Now this is the next letter. That was a very short one. This is now the same month. I wonder if this is the facts that will bring some light to the true characters.
No, not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Same month, February 1883, letter number 106. To accomplish a plan like the current one, many agencies must be employed, and failure in any one direction jeopardizes the results. Are we still talking about the newspaper? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We have had various setbacks and may have more, but please note, first, that 2 points are auspicious, thanks to kind providence. Alan has become friendly, and a friend of yours, I believe, is resident at Kashmir.
Alan, I don't know who he's referring to, but he has a certain degree of influence with the Maharaja of Kashmir, who was tremendously wealthy.
Oh, wow.
And resident is a certain status, not like we would say someone has residency in a foreign country. It meant something else, but I wasn't able to determine what exactly a resident was considered in 1883.
It's probably some type of leadership role in Kashmir, like a government
Apparently,
or
yes.
royal. Yeah. And second, that until the Maharaja of Kashmir, the prince at the top of the list, has been tried, the vital point will not have been touched.
So he was their most promising prospect, and yet no one had contacted him yet.
Interesting. Do you think that Mahatmas would have sent any of their chelas to be like advisors or teachers to the...
Well, let's see what he says.
Oh, okay. Although first on the list, he has been left till the last. Not much was expected from the others, and thus far each of the others who has been approached has failed to respond. Why don't the chelas do as they're told? If chelas neglect orders and their strained sense of delicacy interferes, unless a miracle happens, how can results be expected?
Yeah, he's getting really frustrated with his Asian chelas because obviously he has asked them to approach prominent people, but not being people of status, they're very shy about that. And what's one of the requirements to become a chela? Dauntless courage.
Yes.
Make yourself do it. I'm not a natural salesman, but at one point I decided to sell real estate, be a real estate agent. I had to force myself to become a salesman, and it was good training. It was very good training, but it wasn't easy.
I have telegraphed you to await Alcott's arrival because it is best that you should work together at Calcutta and try to set things in motion. One word from you to the resident would have been sufficient, but you are just as proud as the rest of your race. Oh my gosh. Alcott will be at Calcutta about the 20th. Do not listen to the old woman. She becomes weak-headed when left to herself, but Moria will handle her. That's HPB?
Yeah, and with all of the troubles that are going on, mainly with Hume, but with everything else, she gets even more anxious and befuddled. But Moria is very patient, just like KH, and he says things about her, but he also appreciates all the work that she's doing. She's the one who's really carrying the burden.
Yours, KH. And then the next letter, number 107, is the next month, March 1883.
And where was it received?
Oh, Madras. This is different now.
Oh, so Senate has apparently closed out the house that he was renting in Allahabad because even if he comes back to India, he's not certain where he's going to be. And they're thinking of possibly Calcutta because Calcutta at the time was the capital of India. It was only later, sometime in the early 1900s, that they moved it from there to Delhi and then to New Delhi. But I think one of the reasons is because, as we pointed out, Calcutta is way on the east coast, on the edge of India, next to West Bangladesh today. And so they wanted something a little more central. Maybe there may have been other considerations too. I'm sure there were many political considerations.
Please convey to Colonel Gordon the expression of my sympathy and friendly esteem.
And I don't know what the sympathy was, but I'm assuming someone died, but it obviously wasn't his wife, or they would have made much more to do about that. Alice Gordon was very dear to the Senates and to HPB, so I assume it may have been a parent or someone else in the family.
He is indeed a loyal friend and trustworthy ally. Tell him that with every allowance for the motives given and his own quiet modesty, I still believe he may do much good in his own unassuming way. A Howrah branch is really needed, and he alone can create the nucleus.
Howrah is where they were living. It's a suburb of Calcutta, and that's where they entertained William Eglinton when he was living in India.
Why not try? He doesn't care for the service and is ready at any moment to give it up.
And he was in the service of the government, the British government there. And apparently he's getting kind of fed up with it and is thinking about leaving.
But this is unnecessary so long as it lasts and gives him strength and authority with some native members, which otherwise he would not have. At any rate, he is going to be taken to Shimla and will have plenty of free time.
So for whatever reason, he's being sent to Shimla, I assume, in his role as an officer in the military.
Why not use his opportunities for putting the eclectic and Himalayan in order? In his official capacity, of course, as a member of the council and vice president of the eclectic.
So the Anglo-Indian Society, the eclectic, was in Shimla, but apparently there was another branch, and even today there is a branch of the TS called the Himalayan branch, and it is east of Shimla, but also not high in the Himalayan mountains, but at about 8,000 feet approximately. So beyond just the foot of the mountains, but somewhat up the mountain.
And it's still active today.
Yes, they still have a branch there today.
Wow, that's cool. I will have Alcott send him an official paper to that effect and write instructions for him myself. I am anxious to move the Anglo-Indian eclectic to Calcutta and have its headquarters, though it be nominal for a while, announced through the journal hitherto as established in the capital, the native members of the eclectic incorporated in the Himalayan, and a paragraph inserted to notify all those who would join the Anglo-Indian branch that, in your absence, they would have to address themselves to Colonel William Gordon, acting president in your place. Some people are born for diplomacy and intrigue. I rather think that is not my strong point. Nevertheless, I believe the arrangement would help to impede the disastrous effects of Mr. Hume's endeavors to have the Eclectic Society dead and buried, thus showing those concerned with it that he was its creator and preserver, and that his retirement was its death knell. Thanks for Colonel Gordon's letter.
Hume, with his gigantic ego, first of all, was certain that the TS can't exist without him, but certainly not the Eclectic Society. He was the first president of it. Sid only became president after he left and resigned. And now he wants it dead and gone so that people will say, oh my gosh, they should have made a better effort to keep him there. No, he is really set on destroying theosophy.
There must be some other force working through him.
Well, it is. There's a Jugpa who is working through him. He's going to make another comment about that.
The 30th is as good as any other day after the 27th.
And remember, KH does use astrology. Whenever someone is planning a trip, he often suggests certain dates that would be more advantageous or propitious than other dates.
No, a branch at Madras is not absolutely necessary at the very start, but it does stand to reason that if it is Madras that is to furnish the largest share of the funds, it would have the preference after Calcutta. So long as the money is not in, it is useless to set any dates. Once our paper is established, I will never concern myself again with any worldly enterprise.
Yeah, he's really getting frustrated. He's like, this is exasperating, trying to work with outside people in the outer world. And he's just about had it.
He says never. Wow, he uses the word
Yeah,
never.
he did. And as far as I can tell, that has continued until this day.
Yes, I have worry and annoyance indeed, but then it was to be expected, and no fish undertaking a ramble on the river's bank outside its own element need complain of lower back pain. Oh my gosh.
So he says, any fish that decides he wants to learn how to walk better not be complaining about back pain. And I better not complain either.
He's calling himself a fish out of water, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
That's funny.
And the way he says it.
Yeah. We are near the end now, one way or the other. And once I take my leap back into the crystal wave, few will ever have a chance of seeing me peep out again. What?
Yeah, and he's serious. He says, this is more than I can take.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, once I jump back into my natural element, then you'll very seldom, if ever, see me again.
We are near the end now. So it's March of 1883.
Yeah, but he's talking about their direct interaction. Yeah. Now, as we see, it will continue for a while, but there will come a point when he does make good on this prediction.
Wow. He calls it the crystal wave.
Well, that's their element, and he's calling it like water, a different element than this earth.
Jeez.
Water is considered a little bit higher in spirituality. Right. It's more fluid.
It's less dense, right?
Yeah.
People are not always what they seem, and I have lost much of my optimism in the latest battle. Man was somewhere called the poetry of creation, and woman the poetry of earth. When she is not an angel, she must be a fury. Oh my God. It is only in the latter capacity that I have ever met her on my way when Rajas and Zemindars were quite ready to disperse the necessary funds.
So Rajas, of course, are the
kings or
leaders, ethnic and regional leaders, like a king. Some are Maharajas, great kings, and Zemindars or Zamindars, as they are sometimes called, were the wealthy landowners. Damodar's father was a zamindar and was quite wealthy. So when he gave up caste and was disowned, he renounced his inheritance.
That was DK, wasn't it? DK is the disinherited.
Well, he was also written out of his grandfather's will.
Oh, but it
DK
wasn't.
was.
Okay, but he wasn't a Zemindar. Oh,
Oh,
okay. I'm bringing up DK because he's called the disinherited.
Damodar, when he was young, was used to a lavish lifestyle. He had lots of money at his disposal. So when he met HPB and saw his Mahatma's portrait on the wall, he knew that that was his true mission in life. And so he gave up caste, he gave up wealth in order to embrace this spiritual life.
Well, well, the battle still rages, and we may still brilliantly win the day. Oh, wow. He says that. Yours truly, KH.
He's not ready to give up just yet, but he is getting extremely frustrated. We'll see all of the events that happen in the next few months.
Next letter is letter 108, and this is same month, March of 1883, in Madras.
And he's obviously been asking HPB a lot of questions.
My dear Ward,
Obviously a word that Sinnett had used for himself.
we will not, if you please, deal at present with the situation concerning stars and obscurations, for reasons very plainly told to you this morning by HPB.
Yeah, he keeps asking questions about Devachan and Bardo, and they're getting tired of it.
My task becomes more dangerous with every letter. Oh, wow. It becomes exceedingly difficult to teach you, and at the same time hold strictly to the original program. So far shall we go and no further, but hold to it we must and will.
So far shall we go and no further. Again, it's from the Bible, from the book of Job.
You have entirely mistaken my meaning in the telegram. Oh my gosh, Sinnett's still misunderstanding things. The words more at Adyar related to the true explanation of your vision, not by any means to a promise of some further psychological experiments made in that direction by myself. The vision was due to an attempt by DK, who is extremely interested in your progress. Wow.
Yeah, this is interesting. DK is taking personal interest in what Sinnett is doing.
While he succeeded in getting you out of your body, he failed entirely in his effort to open your inner vision for reasons correctly surmised by you at the time. Wait, so DK gave him like a Satori or something? Or?
Yeah, I don't know if you could call it a Satori, but he did aid him and give him some impetus to get out of his physical body. And let's read the rest of it.
That would require some meditation ability. I took no personal active part in the attempt, hence my answer, surmises correct, more at Adyar. I am in a very precarious position right now and have to be doubly cautious in order not to jeopardize the possibilities of the future.
So he did have some results. He was able to get him out of his body, but he wasn't able to impress him with information or a higher level of experience.
It's safe to assume DK was not with Sinnett at the time physically.
Oh, no. Definitely not.
Sinnett still hasn't probably met
No, Sinnett
DK.
is all the way down at Adyar or in Madras right now. And DK is at Shigatse with KH.
Is Shigatse in the mountains, the Himalayas?
Yes, it's on a very high plateau in the Himalayas.
But that's not where they live normally, is it?
Yeah. I don't know if they lived at the lamasery, at the monastery that's there, but that's where they teach.
The probable date of your departure? Well, on or about April 7th. If your impatience disagrees with this desire of mine, you are free to do as you like. Nevertheless, I would look upon it as a personal favor. I am profoundly disgusted with the apathy of my countrymen in general. Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Sinnett's departure from Madras.
To England.
Oh,
Yeah. He's going to England, remember,
Right,
and
right.
trying to decide which ship to take.
Oh, okay. Okay. More than ever, I trust only in the few staunch workers of the luckless and hapless TS. The Viceroy's letter would be of the greatest help if it could just be judiciously used.
And the Viceroy, remember, was Lord Ripon, who Sennett knew personally. So he had apparently written a letter that was very positive about the TS, and so that's why he's saying if that letter can be used to benefit, let's do it.
But in such matters I see now, I am no judge, as I now divine from the impression left on your mind by R. Srinivasa Rao and others.
And I don't know who that is. It's apparently not the judge that Hume had written to and told that the Mahatmas were fake and that they were sorcerers. So this is someone else.
May I ask of you two more personal and important favors. First, to always bear in mind that whatever is possible will be always done for you unasked. Hence, never to ask for or suggest it yourself, since it will avoid for me the supremely disagreeable task of having to refuse a friend's request without, moreover, being in a position to explain the reasons why.
Yeah, so he's going to do everything he can. Don't ask for something specific.
And second, to remember that, though I may be prepared to do a great deal for you personally, I have in no way bound myself to do anything of the sort for the fellows of the British TS. I have pledged my word to you to teach them our philosophy through your kind agency, whether they accept it or not. But I have never undertaken to convince any of them of the extent of our powers, nor even of our personal existence.
Now, in the past, they made an effort to convince people that they did exist. But based on the results of that experiment, they're now changing tactics.
Their belief or disbelief in the latter is a matter of very trifling importance to us. Good. That's wonderful. That's one of the main signs that you can kind of use is this teacher real or not? Does this teacher need to be known and famous, or would they prefer not to be?
No, right from the very beginning, they said that the charlatans and jugglers are some of the ones that we appreciate us, because if people are wary and find a reason to disbelieve in us, that's fine. We actually prefer it that way.
If they are ever to be benefited by our promise, it must be through you alone and your own personal efforts.
And every real teacher says, don't do it because I say it. Try it, see if it works. If you get results, great. If not, move on to something else.
I'm going to say that most students don't really believe that. They have such reverence and almost, worship towards their teacher. They just do stuff blindly. And that's how culture formed, and that's how so many followers don't make much progress, because they just do things without really even knowing why.
Yes, and as we've said, that's why the Brotherhood is very different from organizations on Earth. They don't have a hierarchy that requires obedience. They have followers who are so convinced through their own experience of the superiority of those beings that they would have no reason not to believe them. And it's completely from their onus, from their belief in these great Mahatmas. It's not because, they'll kick me out if I don't do exactly what I say. We've seen chelas have the opportunity to refuse an order if they want. And in most cases, there is no retribution or no result from that.
Nor can you ever see me in the flesh, not even in a clearly defined vision, unless you are prepared to pledge on your honor never to reveal the fact to anyone so long as you live, unless you receive permission to that effect.
Now, this is a profound statement. And I say that because Numerous students of the Mahatma letters have said that Sinnett never did see either of the Mahatmas. That may not be true.
Yeah, that's very true.
Let's read that again.
Yeah. Nor can you ever see me in the flesh, not even in a clearly defined vision, unless you're prepared to pledge on your honor never to reveal the fact to anyone, so long as you live, unless you receive permission to that effect.
So he never did state, yeah, I saw the Mahatmas, but listen to the pledge he would have had to make. This is the first time that they've required a pledge of him.
That makes sense. I can see why that can cause Sinnett big problems. If he volunteered it, flagrantly, or just perhaps told one or two people, he can have so much backlash. He could be ridiculed, or no, you're a liar, or he might feel like his ego has been enhanced and try to use I've seen them, you haven't.
And that's more often what
Yeah,
happens.
yeah.
It's an ego enhancer. Ooh, I saw this. We have friends who claim to have seen either of the Mahatmas or even the Lord Maitreya. Other theosophists have claimed to have seen the Buddha and the Lord of the world.
It's so obvious. Well, we believe it's obvious to us. I could be wrong, but when someone states it, if they're bragging or not is a matter of opinion. But I love that KH says this. This isn't one of those other huge signs, what teacher is more valid than other teachers. It's comical.
Yeah,
to
I'm
me.
special because, look, I've seen one of these high members of the hierarchy.
I mean, you can go into YouTube right now and Google channel or channeling Maitreya, for example. Or
You'll probably find one of our friends who is deceased.
there are so many people who, I'll say, brag about this, that they receive communications from this person regularly. Come on.
Yeah.
KH is telling him you have to pledge you will never tell anybody. The exact opposite of what everyone else does. Here's a letter from my master. What? This is the exact opposite. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so
No,
cool.
I love it. This is the way it should be.
My gosh. And these letters were never meant to be published. Who found these? How did they even get out, these letters?
Well, because Sinnett left them with his executor, who was the primary heir of his estate. It was a woman named Maud Hoffman. And she turned them over to a Mr. Barker, who in turn published the book in 1923 of just all of the unedited letters. And then he gave the originals to the British Museum. And
Not the TS, the British
no,
Museum.
No.
Wow.
They still have them today.
So that's another very clear sign to me that there's no ego. KH never said you need to publish these letters. And Sinnett sure as heck didn't. Do you think he would have ever published? No, he probably wouldn't have ever published
I
these
don't
letters.
know what instructions he may have given to his executrix, but we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. It's interesting, though. Okay. One more paragraph here. That the consequences of such a pledge will be a never satisfied and ever recurring doubt in the minds of your British fellows is exactly what we want for the present.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, we're tired of trying to prove our existence. Let them disbelieve. We don't care.
Too much or too little was said and proved of us, as M.A. Oxon validly remarked. We are ordered to set ourselves to work to sweep away the few vestiges, and for this new policy you are indebted to the incessant underground intrigues of our former friend, Mr. Hume, now entirely in the hands of the Brothers of the Shadow. Oh, gosh.
Now entirely
Wow.
in the hands of the Brothers of Shadow.
And the more our actual existence is doubted, the better. Wow. As to tests and convincing proofs to the Sadducees of Europe generally, and those of England especially, this is something to be left entirely out of our future program. Unless allowed to use our own judgment and methods, the course of future events will by no means run smoothly. Thus, you should never use such phrases as, For the sake of strength with friends at home,
That's obviously something he had said in a letter.
since they would do no good and would simply irritate the other powers that be all the more, to use that ridiculous phrase.
So that was obviously one of Senate's letters asking for special favors.
It is not always flattering, good friend, to be placed on the same level with shells and mediums for the purpose of tests, even by those one likes the best.
Yeah, Senate had been asking for more proof that he could present, but I think there was more than a little bit of ego involved in that.
And that was obviously just recently, so still
Yeah.
to this day, or to that day rather. I thought you had outgrown. I thought you had outgrown that stage.
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. I thought you were better than that.
At present, let's hold to the strictly intellectual aspect of our interactions and busy ourselves with only philosophy and your future newspaper, and leave the rest to time and its unforeseen development. Wow. It is still curious, going back to our conversation at the beginning of this session, he says, let's busy ourselves with philosophy and your paper, but no meditation instruction. That's interesting.
They haven't got to that yet. They've
yeah.
got too many other things. They're trying to put out fires here. They don't have time to say, oh, let's sit down and meditate now.
Or teaching him how to do it. It is precisely because I follow and perceive the dual working of your mind in making such requests that I sign myself invariably your affectionate friend, K.H.
Yeah, so through all the trials and tribulations, his affection and his patience with Senate continues. So, yeah, we're close to the point where Senate is going to be traveling with his family to London, and so before long, we're going to be entertained by the happenings of the London Theosophical Society.
So the letters are going to be sent there now, coming up.
Apparently, we'll see. All right.
Cliffhanger. It's a cliffhanger. We'll see.
It is a cliffhanger. Every episode is a cliffhanger by design. So, yes, exciting stuff. We will see you again in session number 71. Thank you for following along.